All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. All right, so this thing came out last year and I plugged it a couple of times. This is Robert John and the Wreck, Shine a Light on Me, Brother. Roots rock, bluesy stuff, just brilliant. In fact, one of the guys in this group is on tour with the band Toto. I believe it's the keyboard player. He's great in Toto, and he's really great on this record. This does not sound like Toto, though. It is old-time Americana rock and roll, and it's what a revival would sound like if it got to radio stations again. Robert, John, and The Wreck, okay, came out last year. I'm still plugging stuff that I got last year because, hey, nobody else is doing it. So here I am. And there are a few guys on YouTube that plug albums. So I'm not going to say that would be a little pretentious to say I'm the only one. I just feel like I'm the only one. Speaking of being the only one, am I the only one that feels like Jane's Addiction and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and anything that's either alt rock or grunge rock, am I the only one that thinks that that's not classic rock? Because I've noticed now there are these articles that appear on radio station websites, and their moniker is, Detroit's classic rock, or, Houston, whatever city they're in. Again, they're all run out of the same mothership, and the format is basically a canned format. You might get a few hundred songs that they play over and over again. And the sad part is I'm starting to see songs by artists from the Pearl Jam, Jane's Addiction, whatever era, right? A lot of those songs are now starting to pop up, and people are now going to perceive those songs as classic rock songs. And then there's a discussion of their debut album when it came out and how it managed to be a groundbreaking work, but it doesn't fit. You're a website or you're a radio station that purports to be a classic rock website. Look, classic rock started in the 1950s, as far as I'm concerned, and it did evolve, right? But you kind of knew the basis of the sound. There was always kind of a bluesiness to it. It had soul. It tended to be up-tempo for the most part. The singers could sing. They didn't sound angry or depressed, or I don't know. I don't want to go down any other roads, but there are a couple of other signature attributes that I think were mostly prevalent in that style of music, whether it was a male vocalist or a female vocalist. But the point is, there was a 40-year trail of breadcrumbs that you could follow from Chuck Berry to Winger. Okay, you could follow that trail, and then all of a sudden, the breadcrumb trail ends, and you're left kind of meandering along trying to find where to go. And that was in the 1990s. Now, I've come to the conclusion, reluctantly so, but I have come to this conclusion that the 1990s, even though they were a complete train wreck as far as music goes, they were still more authentic than what we have now by a lot, because you had guys out there who were still trying to play their instruments, albeit in some cases very poorly, but they were out there planting the flag of rock. And again, I'm not saying it's classic rock, and that's my whole beef with all of this, is that now you're seeing this trend where people are just submitting to the corporation that tells you that Jane's Addiction is a classic rock band, or it appears on their website. So you're thinking, okay, Jane's Addiction. Yeah. All right. I remember those guys. They had one song where dog was barking or something and it was really annoying, and the guy's voice was annoying, but it was very different, right? It was very groundbreaking because it was so different and so pioneering that, yeah, that belongs next to the Rolling Stones and, you know, pick a band, you know, pick something that's classic and brilliant. And ZZ Top, can you really argue that ZZ Top is not a classic rock band? You know, again, blues-based band, soul-based band, a certain element to the rhythm section, a certain element to the drumming. I mean, classic rock is pretty identifiable, but we've lost our ability, quite honestly, to identify what classic rock is, because now we're defining it by age and not by style, not by sound, not by quality of musicianship. We're not doing any of that. And I think as time marches on, we take a more mediocre view on pretty much all of the genres that we grew up listening to, and we cheapen it. And by the way, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't do anybody any favors, because they want to induct things that aren't rock and roll. And they did it again. They've got Eminem going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm wondering how come these websites, these classic rock radio stations, they haven't done articles about how Eminem's groundbreaking first album was really important to the classic rock world, because that's your audience. And you're assuming a couple of things. You're assuming, number one, that your audience cares, which they don't. And number two, you're assuming that people will buy into the idea that Eminem is classic rock, which he's not. He's not rock, period. But this is where we've gone. And I think as time goes on, people need to kind of gravitate toward places, you know, as far as media goes, they need to gravitate toward places that talk specifically about classic rock, if that's what they're into. Now, I understand the entire format, the entire idea of rock is under attack. And it's not in this overt way, it's under attack by omission. We're going to have this category at the Grammys. Sure, we're just not going to televise this category at the Grammys. You know, are we going to focus on any of this up and coming classic rock that I've talked about as of late on this particular show? No, we're not going to talk about the new Bonham Bullock album. We're not going to talk about anything that has substance to it that is truly linked to the past, and maybe linked in a fresh way, but definitely identifiable. Instead, we're going to talk about these albums that are 30 years old that, quite honestly, may have sold really well at that moment, but have aged really poorly because it's a period piece. They came out with this alternative rock thing at this moment, and in some cases, it's not, it just fit into that moment and it didn't fit anywhere else. I mean, some of the music from the 80s can be like that, the heavy duty synthesizer driven stuff where, you know, the production value is considered cheesy because they're using like a synthetic drum or a drum machine or something that makes it just sound a little goofy, you know. And at times I like Goofy and I'll go back and listen to Goofy, but it's not like I'm going to sit there all day and digest, you know, artificial flavors and colors and glory in it. But I can take a little solace in the fact that that music did have melody, and most of it was fun to listen to and it was enjoyable. But none of this stuff that they're throwing back out there and recycling from 30 years ago and calling it classic rock, none of that stuff to me makes any sense in the way that the music from the 80s did, or really up until the early 90s. And I'm not picking on one band. There are other bands that I see pop up in articles and I go, who cares? Who really? I mean, there aren't other things that you can rehash if you're going to talk about the past. And there are certainly things that I discover, I don't want to say daily, but at least every couple of days, I will discover something. I shared the Skunk Baxter song, the one he did with Clint Black. He's got a new album coming out. He actually has been hitting a few of the talk shows out there, from what I understand. And people know who Skunk Baxter is if they know classic rock. They know Steely Dan, they know the Doobie Brothers, they know his work, his studio work. They understand how great of a player he is, what a legend he is, and teaming up with a classic vocalist, even though he's not in that genre, but a man who certainly respects the genre and understands country, blues, rock, and all those different formats. And that would be Clint Black. And I think the collaboration was amazing, but few people are talking about it. I don't see that popping up on classic rock websites. Instead, I see stories about Soundgarden and Jane's Addiction and all this stuff. And I'm like, no. Skunk Baxter, baby. That's classic rock. And the song is fantastic. And crickets, that's what we get. So on this kind of blah day for me, where I'm just thinking through some of these things that continue to irritate me, but I do take hope in the fact that you can find the music I'm talking about. The fact that I shared this gentleman here, Robert John and the Wreck, it's fantastic. Shine a light on me, brother. This is the kind of stuff they should be talking about. But they don't. We never progressed, and for whatever reason, there is a blackout. They're unintentional. Even if you think, their motives aren't nefarious, I sit here and I go, something's up. Something's up that they won't share great music with you. Something's up that they have to keep rehashing the crap from 30 years ago that started this snowball rolling down the hill, which is now crashed into the side of a mountain of technology and, fakery, all done on a computer. Or these bands that are all just, I don't know, maybe they're reflecting the darkness in the culture, but there are very few sort of bright shafts of light that beam through it and get back to your soul, get back to your spirit, where you listen to a song and it picks you up. It moves you in a good direction. It's not there just to commiserate with you and help you wallow in your self-pity and your negativity all day. So in any event, I figured I'd get a little philosophical here, and that shows that it's a really slow news day. Hopefully you'll watch the video. Again, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Patreon is a measly $1 a month, just $1. You could do $2, $5, $10, $100, whatever you want to do. But if you want to just help the channel, $1. That's all I want. $1 a month. And you can help me keep this thing going for years and years to come, as we continue to complain about the lack of creativity and lack of imagination in the current music scene. Until next time, I'm Dave, and I will see you then.